helping others and making the University of Idaho a great place to work and learn. Congratulations to Barbara Lyons in Office of Development, our University of Idaho Staff of the Month. And a basket from Lake Tahoe Central Credit Union, and a green dot bag from the Office of Finance Program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So, congratulations, Barb. So our guest speaker, President Saban, is at the mercy of a visiting regent or State Board of Education member today. So if we see him, fantastic. He will be here as soon as he can. In the meantime, we will move forward with the agenda to roll call.
She speaks too fast. Ryan, I want you back.
Huh?
She speaks very fast. All right. Cindy? Here. Allie? Amber? Carly, sorry.
I know.
Greg Crystal? Darren? Chad? Ina? Kristen? Marlene? Jennifer? Greg Empey?
Here.
Lori? Here. Lisa?
Yeah.
Teresa? Christy?
No.
Overfelt?
Here.
Deborah?
Here.
Irma? Janice? Amber Wilson?
Here.
JR?
Here.
And John?
Here.
And Vicki Burnett?
Here.
And Debbie
Hi,
Cottle?
Daryl. Moscow isn't showing up and we're talking, and Lindsay's still up.
Here.
Is Debbie here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, we can only see Boise right now.
Did you hit the little button?
The remote isn't working.
I can only see Moscow.
Okay, well, hi.
Angie?
Here. I can only see Moscow too.
Michelle?
Here.
Alyssa? Here. Ryan?
Brian, me?
Yes.
Here.
Oh, he hung up on me.
Mark Miller? Ron Smith? Greg Walters, okay.
Okay. Well, if you want to tell everyone why you don't have everyone's names.
I don't have what?
Their names.
Oh, because I left your name tags in my office. Sorry. That's why next month, keep them. Okay?
That way it puts it all on us. It's much better all on you.
So Lila has a lot to keep track of, so it is no wonder that one little thing slipped by. If you don't know who someone is, please make sure and ask so that you can be really clear. Next item, approval of minutes. So we need to go back and look at the May 2014 minutes. Do we have any changes that we see that need to be made to the minutes? want to move forward with a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thanks, JR.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? That's fun. Approved. August 2014 minutes. Any changes that we noticed? Anything that's not accurate? Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the August minutes.
Thanks, Janice.
I'll second.
Thanks, Mr. Mahoney. All in favor? Trying to go slow for you.
We're gonna have a fight out back when we're done.
All opposed? Abstain.
I think so.
Okay, executive committee reports. I'll start with Deborah.
No report.
Janice?
Not a lot new going on in the budget world. I met with Ali and Greg a week or so ago, and I'm going to be doing a 3-year comparison on expenses, so that instead of each committee just having, a dollar amount to spend overall, we're going to try to narrow it down by types of expenses, like for the appreciation fair, maybe food, decorations, things like that, or the awards ceremony, table decorations, so that everyone knows kind of what their guidelines are, so that we can have a little bit better grasp on our expenses, because money is tight. That's it.
Thanks, Janice. Lila?
We have 5 openings on staff affairs right now. 2 exempt positions, 2 maintenance service skilled craft, and 1 off campus. I will be working with Darren probably later this week to set up a form of some sort that we'll have Deborah send out. That's it.
Thank you, Lila. Angie?
I don't have anything today.
Okay, thank you, Angie. Greg?
Okay, so we have some guest presenters that are set up through January. Dan Ewart from ITS will come in October. Cesar Mesquita, probably butchering that, Director of Admissions, will be coming in November. And Keith Ickes from Budget and Planning will be coming in January. And then if you all have anybody that you would like to have come to be our guest presenter before the meeting, just shoot me an email and I'll invite them. I've got one request from the library that I will try to set up for February. So, that's it.
So as for my report, I was just informed that I will be sitting on the search committee for the provost and executive vice president. So we do have some staff representation there. We also have a couple of other administrative positions coming up. There are, for example, the VP for advancement. And while they are using a search firm for that, I am pushing to get some staff representation. So I may ask someone to sit on that search committee if we are given that opportunity. So be aware of that.
Ally?
Yeah.
For the provost search, are they doing that similar to what they did with the president, that the interviews will be at an off-site location and all that kind of stuff, or is it is it being done by a third-party search committee as well, or is it just an internal?
So there is an initial they said the first part of the search is going to be done by a search consultant, but the rest of it is going to be by the committee and of course the Board of Regents included in that. And that's about all the information I have right now. I think it's just getting started, and they're really trying to wrap it up very quickly. Dan Muir is coming to present at our meeting next month. That is perfect timing because they, IT is forming, I guess, an advisory council on rebalancing technology investments. So you may recall from the Focus for the Future report that one of the items, the issues that was noticed that needed some more investment was IT technology. And so, so just so you know, that's coming down the pipeline. Dan should be able to provide a lot more information then. He's just getting the committee together. And I was asked to find someone to sit on that. I said I might be able to, but I might ask someone else to do that. So if you're interested, hit me up. Okay, so some of you may have heard about a career ladder. We talked about it just a little bit at the last meeting. I can't remember how much I talked about it. But essentially, this concept of career ladder came up at the administrative roundtable in July. Greg Walters and Ron Smith, to my understanding, presented it to the roundtable as just a suggestion, a tentative thing, and we saw it, and I started looking into it, and then Faculty Senate, to my understanding, heard about it, and they started looking into it. So we're really pushing forward to try and get something going with this. A career ladder is essentially like I'm really not explaining this very well, but it's essentially like very clear pathways for advancement, and we would be looking at specific position types. A good example is administrative assistant. You've got AA1, AA2, AA3, and it's very easy to see how an increase in responsibilities, an increase in scope and breadth could, over time, lead to someone making those advances. And so having a very clear pathway towards advancement could definitely increase our retention and just general staff morale. So that's something that we're very interested in. It's just in the planning phases. I wanted to let you know that Ron Smith is developing a proposal that he plans to bring forward to the Faculty, Senate, and Staff Affairs leadership. And then he will bring it to us next month. And then it will go to Faculty Senate just as, like we're presenting this, that's my understanding, the following month. Or maybe it's Faculty Senate meets weekly, don't they? So it's going to be like a week or two after we meet and talk to Ron about it. So it's very short timeline as far as it being presented to us. But something that's really of interest that we should know is that it's highly supported. My understanding, and Brian will share more about this in his report, is that it's a top priority for Faculty Senate this year. And at the Administrative Roundtable, the President indicated that he was very interested in seeing something like this move forward. So I think that we have a lot of support from our administration. Any questions about that? As I know more, I will provide more information.
So that kind of a program only for people who have a potential to, like, as you mentioned, administrative assistant 1 to 3. What if your position doesn't? What 3 is now 1 to 3? What if you just?
So
if there is any alternative, rewarding program for people who?
I think that's a great question. I think it's something that we're going to address or try to address. The example that I keep using is if you work for the Forest Service and you're hired in at like GS9, within GS9 there's steps. So it's more general than just specific positions and ladders from one position to another, but it would actually be a stepwise within a position. So within a position, you'd say have, I don't know, 4 or 5 steps of promotion potential. Does that make sense? It's one of the things that I'd like to explore anyway.
That sounds more appealing actually, like you stay in the position.
Right.
Right.
It's not forcing people to leave.
And that's not the point of it at all, my understanding. But when I talked to Greg Walters about it, I said, well, what about like a very program coordinator is a position that comes to my mind. It's not one that lends itself easily to multiple steps for advancement. And he said, that's just one of those ones that it may have to wait. And we may see if we can get some of the easy ones moving forward first. But really, they're just in the planning stages. So if you have a strong opinion about it, it would be great to have your input. Because I think those things are important to consider. Any other questions about that?
But Armando's going to report at next meeting, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we should have a lot more information and hopefully a proposal then.
So will he have input into that proposal?
Will Ron?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And from who, I'm not entirely sure who all is providing input at this time, although we are meeting with him. Faculty, Senate leadership, and staff affairs leadership are meeting with him in advance of the staff affairs meeting. So I don't know if he'll have a proposal before then or not. Other questions? Okay. I'm going to interrupt my report to welcome President Staben.
And I apologize for being a little late today. We had a student emergency last night, so my schedule got a little disrupted this morning, so I apologize.
That's my excuse too.
In fact, it's his excuse too.
Just wanted to make it clear that I wasn't tardy for a bad reason.
Matt was actually meeting with me and some other folks, so.
President Staben, can I get you to sit up here so that the camera can see you? Or would you like to?
Well, I don't know.
What would you be most comfortable with?
I'm fine sitting there. Or you can pull up a chair beside me. I'm not on the camera.
Yeah, no, they can see us.
Oh, really?
Just
Oh,
so I hear.
we're looking at them. Oh, their voices. Okay, it takes me a while to catch on. So sorry. Okay, so, well, I wasn't exactly sure what you wanted me to address, Alex. So do you got particular things of interest?
Right. I think that what we had in mind were kind of priorities for the university this year, particularly in relation to staff.
Sure. So, well, let's start with just general priorities. And of course, all of these priorities are dependent upon staff in one way or another. So, as you probably have heard me talk around the university, I've talked a lot about our priority. One of our big priorities is increasing enrollment. And there are 2 really good reasons for increasing enrollment. One is noble, and we can talk about it readily, and that is that we need to educate more students for Idaho. And it turns out one of our jobs as a university is to educate students for Idaho, so that's a good thing. Idaho needs more educated people. The other reason, frankly, is a little bit more self-interested, and we can talk about this too, but it turns out, where does our money come from? Anybody know the answer to that one? Where does our revenue actually come from? Students. Students are about 50, pretty close to 50% of our, actually they're over 50% depending a little how you view it, but tuition and fees, for example, is almost the same size as our state appropriation. And if we add in things like auxiliaries, which many of you probably work in auxiliaries, like the housing area and stuff like that, it's over 50% of our money actually comes from students. So if we have more, this isn't rocket science, so if you have more students, you have more money. And it turns out, is there anybody here who would prefer never get another pay raise? I'm guessing no. So, but basically, your pay raise is likely to come from students. And so let's get more, let's treat them well, let's ensure that they stay here, that they graduate, and it turns out by doing that, we will do our state mission, what we're actually here to do, and we will serve ourselves extremely well. So to me, that's fairly clear strategy as to what we do. And what you'll hear from me a lot over the next probably years, but certainly over this next semester is we are a great university, but we can do everything that we do a bit better. So one of the questions that I would ask each person in this room, and as you communicate to other staff members, is to communicate that idea that actually a lot of that our future is under our control. And by doing things better, we can have a better future. This is not rocket science, actually. And so that's kind of the simple message that I would put to staff, to faculty, to pretty much everybody associated with the university. And we are doing some things better, and even in the roughly 6 months since I've been here, I see that we're improving certain things that we are doing better. And is there room for further improvement? I believe absolutely there's room for further improvement. So let's work together and figure that out. So that's probably the most obvious priority. There are other things that are very important that the university does besides recruit and retain and graduate students. We also have a very important role in conducting research and bringing the fruits of knowledge, research, and established knowledge to our communities. And our community is primarily the state of Idaho. We operate throughout Idaho. And we actually have sites in 42 of Idaho's 44 counties. It seems like I visited every single one of them over the summer. I've traveled a lot over the summer. I have been to all of our research centers, all of our education centers, a number of our extension offices, and all of the larger cities in Idaho at least one time throughout the summer. And really, doing that helps one see the impact that we really do have throughout Idaho. And it's quite extraordinary, and how much respect people have for the University of Idaho and for the work that you do here and the work that's done throughout the state by faculty and staff throughout the state. But anyway, that's what I've been doing, and we need to kind of keep doing things better, and we can. And we can improve the state. And it turns out it's always better to live in a state that's more prosperous and has better education and has industrial opportunities and recreational opportunities, and and that's it. And so a lot of what you'll hear from me is how we must rely on ourselves to make things better. Sometimes when I say these things, I actually get sort of a look from people that say, well, isn't it your job to go advocate to the state legislature for more money? It is. That's one of my jobs, and I will do that as effectively as possible. But I'm always a little puzzled when people say, well, that's where the money has to come from, and et cetera. Really? You want to depend upon the state legislature in Idaho? I'm not so sure that I would peg all my future to that. I would rather rely on myself. I'd rather rely on what I can do. And there's a lot you can do here. So, and some of it is very simple, and some of it's harder, but there's a lot that we can do. So that's kind of the priority. And that research mission, we bring stuff out there, and we do some really important work out in the state. Had some wonderful opportunities this summer. One day we did this, what I like to call seedling to sawmill tour, because it sounds better than the sawmill to seedling. But we actually started in the sawmill and then saw the seedlings. But anyway, we did a logging tour, basically, or a forest products tour is probably a better description. We started at the Lewiston sawmill, and you can't believe how sophisticated an industry that actually is. Employing, it turns out, University of Idaho graduates a lot. So I don't know, how many of you have been to a sawmill recently? Anybody? You have. You see a CT to scan the logs?
Yeah.
They CT scan the logs, optimize the cutting pattern, and then each stud, for example, if you're making studs, is on this line, and they're basically taking a photo of it, deciding how to grade it, sorting the thing. It's just amazing. But then we went from the sawmill up to two logging operations, saw them in operation. A lot of controversy about logging operations, I would say, and whether, how we do this without damaging our environment. But it turns out, you look around in a room and you say, well, I like this room. What's in this room? Steel, extracted from a mine. Wood, came out of a forest. Plaster, Not sure where that comes from. Actually, I do know where that comes from. Today, you know where most drywall comes from? Plaster comes a little different. Anybody know where drywall comes from? It comes from the scrubbers of electrical power plants, the calcium sulfate that is used to desulfurize the flue gases. About 98% of the United States drywall is made from gypsum from flue gas. So anyway, but another extractive industry. So it turns out all the things we like can't be done without some form of extraction. And the great thing about forests is they're actually a renewable source. So it's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, went to our Micah Creek, and I've learned that that's the way you pronounce it in Idaho. Micah Creek watershed research site where we're looking at the effects of logging roads, et cetera, on watershed. Incredible day, to spend that out there and see all of these things and see the University of Idaho and the impacts that we're having from our graduates through our research, et cetera, is really quite extraordinary. So you're part of this rather extraordinary enterprise that I think is pretty exciting, pretty fun, and great. So Allie, those are sort of the priorities writ large, and I think each of you can probably see what roles you might have in ensuring that. I mean, whether you're working at the Student Rec Center and ensuring that students and faculty, and even occasionally the president, have a great experience at that rec center, that means a lot to how our students and our faculty perceive their lives here on campus, I think. And that's something, I met Jeffrey and Brian because I know that he works over there. You're still working there, right? You got the campus rec shirt on. I'm still in good shape. So it's great. So maybe questions would help drive us along.
Would you be willing to talk about some of the strategies that you're considering to increase enrollment?
Yeah, I'm considering rather simple strategies. It turns out we have a great education. We offer great value, wonderful scholarships to our students. We will actually, a financial aspect of the strategy is we will, and I've been talking to deans already about this, we will be trying to ensure that as much as possible we will use our scholarship resources as recruiting resources, and that will be a little bit of a change in philosophy at this institution actually, so we'll be doing that. That'll look fairly behind the scenes, but we're looking at how to optimize our scholarship resources from a recruiting standpoint. Two, we're going to make sure that we do what I call the nuts and bolts better. And, we hired a new person to run our enrollment management area, and just things like campus tours, we're doing those in a much more organized fashion. There's no better way to recruit a student to a campus than if you got them on your campus. That's really the time to seal the deal, because they cared enough to come here. I mean, you can mail out to 50,000 students some little brochure, and you're lucky if half of them open that brochure. But if they came to your campus, they have a real interest. And it's at that point that you can say, look, there's these great faculty members, this is wonderful stuff you're going to be doing, you're going to live in this residence hall with a lot of other students who are exciting and fun to be with, and you're going to go down to the rec center, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And we want to make sure that experience, that the student, and usually parent with them, has an experience that suggests to them, that indicates the true value of the university to them. So that kind of thing. Having recruiters who have expectations as to how many prospective students they would see, how many visits they would make to high schools, all that kind of stuff. I am kind of a nuts and bolts guy, and when you work here, you are expected to work here and give it your all. And when you do that, then together we can all kind of prosper. But some of that kind of rather simple nuts and bolts stuff, plus a little behind the scenes aspect on scholarships. We'll also do some other things. We're going to work on self-reported admission. We probably won't get to that this year. And there is some controversy about this, but so what do I mean by self-reported admission? It turns out that we have often been waiting. We basically always wait on an official transcript. Well, students can give you an unofficial transcript really quickly and at no cost, and especially low-income students. That's an issue. So we will be changing probably the self-reported admission process within probably about a year and a half. And we may make a few problems. But what are the problems you make for yourself? Well, you admit a student who unofficial transcript that was in error, it's not that tragic, okay? Very few students will do that. Most of them will do it by accident. Most of the accidents won't really be issues. And what's the good side? The whole admissions process is much faster. Students get instant feedback, and they come. Because it turns out everybody's impatient. I'm really impatient, but students are impatient. So some of those kinds of things. But on that student tour, when they come here, let's say you're in physical planning, and let's say you're a gardener. When they come here, are those families going to see that this is a well-maintained place? Are they going to see that the windows are broken or not broken? Are they, those kinds of things? So every person can have a role. When they, when they come to a place, do you engage with them? Do you say, "Can I help you?" Those kinds of things actually make a difference to people. Question down here.
Yeah, enrollment increase. What role do you see retention playing?
I think retention is a very important component of that. So when I talk about enrollment, I think of both recruitment and retention. And retention and graduation is really critically important. And we are a decently performing and not a high-performing institution. Let's be frank, okay? We accept a fairly decent student academically, pretty good academic profile when students coming in, and we do okay with them. We do about what you'd expect with that student. It depends, you can do academic profiling a couple different ways, but we have basically like a 23.2 average ACT coming in, and we're right around 80% first-time, full-time freshman retention. That's almost exactly what you predict for a 23 ACT student, okay, kind of average. There are more sophisticated ways to look at that, but we're just about where you'd expect. If we were a high-performing institution, we'd be about 5% higher than that. I do sometimes go back to the University of South Dakota. When I went there, we had a 69% first-time full-time freshman retention. We had a 22 ACT average. When I left, we had a 22 ACT average, and we had an 81% retention. So that's a high-performing institution. And there's lots of ways to get there. There's lots of things to do, and lots of little tweaks, maybe some big tweaks, but it turns out it's easier to make little tweaks and get there. And I do sometimes use the example that was impressive to me when my wife first worked for IBM. She was the quality engineer on an assembly line that did a 900-step manufacturing process for a disk head, and they had a 0.3% overall yield on this process, which is pretty low. And in 1 year, by tweaking the process, and by the way, if you have 900 steps and you get 99.5% yield at every step, you get 0.3% yield at the end. So you have to go from 99.5% to 99.9%, basically. And at the end of the year, they got 30% yield. And you can imagine how much more profitable the business is at 30% yield than at 0.3% yield. So you can do that. And it literally wasn't rocket science. It was how do you do each one of these things a little better. We don't even have a 900-step process exactly. We have kind of it's hard to describe the process by which a student enters and graduates the university. There might be thousands of steps in some ways and maybe just a few hundred in some others, but if we do each one of those better, early alerts for students will look at whether or not they should be getting an earlier feedback on their grades. This is something the faculty can do. We used to call every student who did not pre-register in the fall. We would call every student who didn't pre-register in the fall as soon as pre-registration was over. And we had not done that before. And it turns out almost every student we called would say, gee, I didn't think anybody at the university really cared about me. Well, that's an indictment of the university, in my opinion, if that's the response that you get. So you can change those things. I don't know exactly what we do in all these processes, so I'm not sure, but you can do a lot, pretty simply. And a couple hundred phone calls doesn't cost very much. So, and even if you think of the cost, and so we would make 100 phone calls basically in the fall, and I doubt that we got more than 10 students from that, but think about what 10 students brings in. You know, roughly what does 10 students bring in, just in terms of a revenue? Any idea?
$60,000.
In tuition. And then if they're living on campus, if they're a first-year student, they bring another 10 roughly in living costs for the full year now, if they didn't come back for the second half or something, you know. That's it. So really, if you could make 100 phone calls and make $150,000, would you do that? I would. So, you know, I'd make 100 phone calls for $150,000. So, you know, think about how you can do that. Think about every student. And every student who doesn't come back, every student who doesn't graduate, that's a lost opportunity for this institution. So retention is critically important. Is there any other straight man out there who wants to put out a question? Yeah.
No, that's all me. All right, these things that you're talking about are wonderful, but they take people to do them.
Yeah.
In my experience here at the university, I've noticed that we have some very good people who are very loyal and do stick around and make a big difference. I've also noticed that UI could be kind of a training ground for people to get a little education and a little experience and out of here to a lot of other places, which means people like me and many of my comrades here spend a lot of time hiring and training and then hiring and training and then hiring and training instead of spending a lot of our focus implementing your vision. Is there any talk about how we can, you know, maybe get some good employee retention?
Yeah, so it should be our vision, not my vision, but yeah. So we have pretty high turnover for an institution, actually, at both staff and faculty levels. And here's what I think about turnover. I actually think it's very hard to motivate loyal, motivated type people with money, but it's easy to demotivate loyal, motivated people by paying them or treating them unfairly. And right now we've reached in our pay a level where people feel undercompensated, I believe. And on the faculty side, we're at about 84% of our peer institutions. On the staff side, it's a little less clear what a true peer is, but we're probably in the mid to low 80s, 82 to 84%. That's probably right. And I think on the staff side, we're seeing, you know, flight to WSU, for example. You don't even have to sell your house if you get a job at WSU. And you got a 5 mile longer commute probably, and that's about all that the problem is, right? So that's a real challenge. So I do think we need to get our pay level up. Our top legislative priority is a salary competitiveness request to the legislature, and come back to enrollment. It turns out more students, more money in the pockets of our employees. Not buying their loyalty. You cannot buy someone's loyalty, but you can underpay and undervalue to the level where you lose it, I think. And I think that's part of our problem.
I can add to that question. I don't think that compensation is the only concern. I think a lot of our staff are overworked, really overworked. I know most members of this committee, for example, are definitely overtaxed, not just by being on staff affairs, but in their positions and in other issues or initiatives that they undertake as related to their positions or as related to the university. So in order to become the loyal, passionate employees that we are, we have to overwork ourselves. It feels like, because there isn't enough manpower to go around. Have you explored?
I don't have a key to that. There is an old IBM saying that I actually like, which is work smarter, not harder. And sometimes we think we have to do things that we actually don't have to do that way or don't have to do at that time or things like that. So efficiency is important. I'm not saying that people are inefficient, but sometimes it's worth looking at whether or not there are ways you can streamline what you actually do. And I think that's worth looking at. You know, working hard is probably a realistic thing. I mean, we demand a lot of our employees, and they generally deliver, which is great. So I don't have the magic key. I'll come back to, it turns out, you know, if you want more employees, as opposed to, that's great, I get that. But it's a resource question, too. Right now, we probably don't have the resources to significantly increase staffing. We need to increase resources to increase compensation and staffing. Maybe not the message you wanted to hear, but I tend to be pretty honest.
I have kind of related question. Like when you're talking about increased enrollment, then it means more students, and it means someone has to do the research project with them or have to teach classes. So does it imply that you need to hire more people for that, or not?
If we get a truly significant increase in enrollment, we will have to hire more people at the faculty level, more people at the staff level. But there's a good deal of increased capacity, especially, frankly, on the retention upper level side that we have that's underutilized. I'll give you an example from the educational arena. So it turns out, if you think about how you deliver education right now, and we could think about whether this is exactly how we should always do it, but English classes, you pretty much do 25 kids at a time in an English 101, right? So if you grow enrollment by 25, and pretty much we have 25 in every section that we offer. So if you recruit another 25 students, you need one more instructor unit in some way. Now, often an instructor does more than one section, but you get the point, I think. But look at an upper level biology class. Not uncommon, it has 12, 13, 14 students in it. Usually, you can have another 2 or 3. No problem. No resource needed to speak of, or only a small marginal resource needed. Does it increase the workload of the professor? Just a little bit. I mean, I've been there, I've done that. You have 12, you go to 15, you grade 3 more exams. Not that big a deal. We have capacity for those kinds of increases, just sitting right here, right now. Okay. If we had, and on the staff side, it's a little harder to estimate the actual capacity. It just is. I mean, if you're looking at processing applications, there's only so many applications a person can process in a day. You know, there's only so many things each person can do in a day. It can be a little different deal. But I think we have underutilized capacity, not everywhere, but with respect to students and especially on the instructional side, I am confident we have underutilized capacity.
I was more thinking from the research point. I'm a research support personnel. Well, we don't have many research personnel around, and if you think about increased enrollment and increase in graduate students, most of the science major graduate students, they need some kind of research project. They need the space for that. You need the lab. They need the resources. I was kind of thinking from my own corner. That's why.
Yeah. So on the research side, and I guess I didn't address that. I mean, yes, they need these things, but frankly, our labs are actually. Have you ever been in a lab at a really top-flight research place? It is swinging, and it is packed. There's unmet. I have run a research lab for many years, and I had twice as much space per graduate student at the University of Kentucky as I had as a graduate student at the University of California, Berkeley. Twice as much. And we have capacity to increase. What we need is additional grant funds to do that. And that is dependent upon our research productivity. So the principal investigators here need to become even more active. And some are very active and do a great job, but we have capacity. And we're building some additional building capacity. For example, the IRA building will be a significant improvement. But per square foot on a national basis, you can become more productive than we are currently. Now, don't go out and tell all the science faculty that, that would be a lot. Yeah.
Have you set enrollment goals in terms of numbers over the next?
I'd like that to be a bit of a dialogue, but I've said this a lot. So the state of Idaho, the State Board of Education in Idaho, the Idaho Business Leaders for Education have all said we should have 60% post-secondary attainment in Idaho. That actually is exactly what President Obama said the United States should have, and that would bring us into, by the way, third position in the world, which is not that good, okay, if we actually were at 60%. You know, we'd be way behind South Korea, for example, at that point. But, okay, that's not an unreasonable goal. Where are we right now in Idaho? Post-secondary attainment. No, you're much more pessimistic than you need be.
50?
40. Nation's at about 50, and Idaho's about 40. And so I'm not that good a mathematician, but I take 60 and divide it by 40, and I say that's about a 50% increase, you know, 1.5 times as many. And we've got about 10,000 undergraduates, roughly. And so let's go to 15,000. That would be our proportional share of that mission. And an extra 5,000 undergraduates would mean a huge financial difference to this university. Can we get 5,000 in our current physical plan, our current faculty, our current staffing? No. But we can grow to that. And it would make a huge difference to this town, by the way. This town would be more prosperous. You would have more restaurants. You would have more things here. So why would we want to do less than what the real president is calling for us to do, and what all of our state leaders are calling for us to do, you know, et cetera? I'm not a very, you know, I'm not maybe the smartest guy in the world, but it's like, really, do you want to do less than everybody says you should be doing? I don't think so. I think we want to do at least that. So let's go 50% up in undergrads, and then we'll probably have a growth, an associated growth with graduate students, but probably not that much. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Yeah.
Do you have a timeline on when you want to hit 15,000?
Next year's fine. My timelines are always short. There's a joke in the executive suite, is this to be done on Staben time? And so, yeah, I would like to see us grow to that. So I plan to be president for 10 years, and I'd like to walk out the door with a minimum of 15,000 students, and I'd prefer to get there before then.
So probably 2 or 3 years ago, the whole mantra was 16 by 16. I take it that's gone bye-bye.
I don't see how we're going to get there.
I agree.
So, you know, I'm not a totally unrealistic person. I'm just mildly unrealistic. I think I've asked the enrollment management to try to get us a 5% increase in freshman class next year. I'd like to see us ramp up that retention. I'd like to, you know, so we'll see some incremental increases, and 5% next year would be great. I'd like to see 5% a year for a number of years. And I'd love to see 10% a year. That's what I'd rather see. And but 5% is probably a little more realistic right now. Yeah.
Well, to put you in the hot seat, do you have any inside intel on how we're doing this semester as far as
this? So as far as our freshman class.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, as far as
overall enrollment.
Enrollment, yeah.
Yeah. So we're, you know, the state board will be releasing official figures pretty soon. I think we'll be up slightly on our freshmen and down in overall enrollment, slightly, which is not good. By the way, even the political aspect of, you know, when you think about going to the state for more money, which is one of my jobs, and I will do that, it's going to be a lot easier when I go and I say, we're growing, we're educating more students, we're helping you towards your goal of 60%. Nobody will fund you if you go, geez, it really kind of sucks. It turns out we're getting smaller, we're not doing very well. Can you just give us more money? if you can sell that, you're a far better, more persuasive speaker than I am, okay? So, but on the other hand, going, we are getting students, we're marching towards that 60% goal, we're doing a great job with them, we're on board, we're gonna do this, you know, I could really use your help on this thing, and if you do that, we're gonna go even faster, we're gonna do better. I can sell that, okay? Probably anybody can, but I can. So, yeah.
Do you have student to faculty and student to staff ratios over an historic period of time? Because I know that we're much smaller now, and yet students have grown some. We're much smaller as far as staff and faculty.
Our faculty and staff?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not at a very unusual student to faculty or student to staff ratio. We're not ridiculously low staff, if that's your question.
Okay.
Especially on a faculty to student ratio, we're not really understaffed, in my opinion.
And for increased enrollment, how will online education help?
I think that can be an element. Online, there's a lot of place-bound people in Idaho. There's a lot, because we have traditionally not had a very high rate of college going, there's a large number of people in Idaho who need a college education. Most of those people are not here. Many of them are in Boise or in southern Idaho. They're distributed around the state. And so online education can be a way for them to participate. I don't think we've been as strategic as we can be about using online education to both bring people in and finish them off. And online education, by the way, I mean, I probably get a lot of questions about that. It's something we went pretty big on in South Dakota. It was a real boon to the university in many ways, and it was the most controversial thing I probably did as a provost. So I had a faculty member come in one time and tell me how awful it was that we were doing online education, and just terrible. And this is at a time when we were netting to the university about $4 million a year. We had some budget problems, and we grew our online education. When we had budget problems at the start, we were netting about $1 million, and we got to about $4 million in about 3 years. And so anyway, so he came in and he was really saying, this is something you should stop, it's terrible, and all that. And I said, you're right, I'm going to stop that. Students should come to our campus, and I'm going to stop that tomorrow. Now, can you just give me a list of the 50 faculty I should fire tomorrow? Because that's what I got to do if we stop doing that. And it's just any of your friends that you want. You just give me that list, and then you and I will meet with them, and we'll just fire them tomorrow. No problem. What do you think? And he's like, well, it may not be as bad as all that. And so, because you got to make decisions. Online education, in my opinion, is probably not as rich an experience as coming to a campus and being here and all that. I get that, but I bought a lot of McDonald's hamburgers, and it turns out that's a pretty good experience. Not the world's best, maybe. I've had a much better hamburger than that, but I still will buy that when I'm on the road and I want something dependable, and that's where I am. I think that's online education.
We're in a rural area, and we don't have a large pool of professionals that are going back to school in this area, and in my opinion, we should provide that ability for people in Boise, people in Portland.
Right. Yeah. That's essentially exactly the situation we were in at South Dakota. We're in Vermilion, South Dakota. Has anybody been to Vermilion, South Dakota? You have?
Absolutely.
And why did you go there?
Because I grew up in South Dakota, and we had functions there.
You went to the university there? Or?
No, I went to Black Hills State.
Okay. But anyway, not too many people, even in South Dakota, really live in Vermilion. It's 10,000, 6,000 of whom are students at any one time. And tiny place. And, the major metropolitan area is 60 miles away. And, so for example, our MBA program we were actually going to phase out completely face-to-face MBA because we didn't have anybody who wanted to come to Vermilion and take it. And we had one of the larger online MBA programs in the United States. And a lot of people in South Dakota taking that MBA, as an example. And actually, a lot of people all over the U.S. were taking that MBA. So you can do that.
Well, to piggyback on that comment, I'd like to see if there's anything we do with summer session. Other institutions I've been around, summer's been hopping, students everywhere. When I came here, the resident in me loves it. Students go away, I get the town back to myself. Right. But the businessman in me is like, I think we're walking away for some money.
Yeah, so we probably are, and building a vital on-campus summer session is something, but I'll also clue you in on something that our neighbors to the south, BYU, Idaho, and to some extent have discovered, and certainly we discovered at the University of South Dakota. Summer is a great time to offer online courses because it turns out all the kids go back to Boise to work, and what they really like to do is take a couple of courses, and it's the time to offer online courses. So we have these really interesting enrollment patterns when I was at the University of South Dakota. If you looked at our online efforts, we offer roughly 33% of our hour, 35% in the fall, 30%, no, it was like 37, 33, and 30% in the summer. 30% of all of our hours in the summer, okay? But if you looked at the course taking patterns, it was really interesting because although we had on-campus students taking courses in the fall and in the spring via distance, via online methods, in fact, it was about 20% of our hours were to students who were actually residential in the fall and in the spring, and 80% to non-traditional students who were place-bound. But in the summer, all of the place-bound students, but many of them stop taking courses because they take the summer off with their kids. And the on-campus students ramp up their course taking because they go home and get a job. So it was really different course taking patterns. It's, given the number of jobs in Moscow in the summer, I don't think you're ever going to have an incredibly vital summer session here. You might have some niches where you can do that, but I doubt you're really going to ever have just a 12-month operation, unless you literally go to a 12-month operation. BYU can do that because BYU Idaho, because they basically tell you when you're going to go to school. I don't think that would work for us. But we could facilitate you continuing to go to school in the summer if we did certain things with online in the summer especially. And then once you do it in the summer, it turns out it's not so hard to just run it year round. So you just serve different populations.
Just part of that in curriculum instruction, which is the department I'm in, our master's program is entirely online. And so I've not done the numbers, but I would say in the summer, 80% of our classes are online, and we do really well.
Yeah, which I think is what everybody who's an online provider actually notices, or many do. Yeah.
Sorry. I was going to say, working here, I've been here for 13 years, but I've always taken an online course and an in-class course, and I'm through the business school. So yeah, I was sad to see that they took some of those away to finish up. But
yeah, why did they take them away?
I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at American education over the last 15 years, all of the growth has been in online, all of it.
But that was, I have one more point.
Oh, okay.
So we've talked about getting students here and keeping them here and graduating them. Any career opportunities for them? Do we see any, where do we fit into that?
Our students do great in terms of careers, and they have traditionally done very, very well. And we are trying to ramp up the quality of advice that we give them and support in finding a career. And we are doing some things there. One of the things we just did was actually buy a license to a career coach program that's actually from one of our local companies, EMSI. It's actually a very interesting program that helps students find what their degree would relate to in terms of a career in the area in which they would wish to live. And so there are some interesting resources there. But our students do very, very well. We haven't done as much as I would like to see us do in terms of tracking the students and their career entries, but organizations like payscale.com have done that, and the return on investment for U of I degree is actually quite good for our students. I don't know if that addresses your question. And actually, if you think about the enhanced productivity and wages of our alumni base, which actually we had EMSI calculate, it's quite an extraordinary number. So if you take the difference in wages estimated to be due to the education that one received at the University of Idaho, by taking the differential between where you live with a high school education and the wage you would receive, and where you live with that University of Idaho education, you can calculate the annual number for all of our graduates. Kind of an interesting number. That's sort of like the economic return. You know, people say go to college, get a better job. That's sort of like the annual sum of these are the people who went to college and got a better job. So how much is that number that University of Idaho students, graduates, produce in a year? Anybody know? You want to hazard a guess? That's $740 million a year of enhanced wages, okay? That actually underestimates the economic input considerably because private entrepreneurs are not counted. So if you were to go look at Doug Oppenheimer, he's a pretty successful entrepreneur, does a lot of, he and his brother Skip developed a lot of buildings in Boise, right? Anybody, you at least probably been to Boise, been to an Oppenheimer building or something like that?
Saw his stories on our website.
Saw his story is on our website. He's doing pretty well, do you think? I mean, Skip's got a jet that he flies up here.
Nice office.
Seems like he's doing okay, all right? He doesn't count because he doesn't get any wages. So we don't even count him as in the value that our graduates produce. Because it's really hard to get, with a private company, you can't figure out how much money they actually make. So we don't get to count Skip and Doug Oppenheimer, who probably would count pretty well for us. I probably shouldn't pick on them alone, but you know, to us, they are invisible. So we're just looking at enhanced wages, and it's $740 million a year, which is pretty extraordinary. Our students do okay. The average nationwide wage differential for a college versus a high school graduate is $1 million. That wage differential has never been higher and is growing rapidly. And that's lifetime earnings. That particular number is lifetime earnings. Okay, anything else? I'm probably supposed to be somewhere else. So, anything else that you might want to ask me? Nobody's asked me about my racquetball record, my, you know, my ride to Idaho. Nothing fun. So, yeah, you're a pretty tough crowd. You're pretty serious. Exactly. Right.
Point of fact, the lumber tour you took, Darren Ball was in that, and he is a U of I grad.
Oh, yeah.
The U of I alum.
Many of the people that were
they?
Yeah, were U of I grads. Yeah, exactly.
He was really thrilled. He came. He's going to be my brother-in-law, so he came home and over barbecue talked a great deal about the day he got to spend with you, and I enjoyed it.
Well, good. Yeah. It was a great trip. My wife and I got to go on this tour, and actually our son joined us. The logistics of this tour were kind of extraordinary because we started at the Lewiston sawmill. Then they picked us up in a helicopter and we went over to logging operations, and then we ended up in the middle of nowhere, and this truck picked us up, and then they took us to Micah Creek, and then we ended up in St. Mary's, and then we took a boat down to a Black Rock club and met with the Forest Products group. So it's kind of an exhausting day because we must start at about 6:30 in the morning going down to Lewiston, and ended up driving home from there at 10:30 or something like that. So kind of an exhausting day. I do feel like at least hourly you've been getting your money's worth out of it. Yeah. So I noticed that the pen that you have here is the Boise State Trio program.
So one of my work studies, if this helps, one of my work studies, who then became a tutor for me, He started out at the BSU TRIO program, and he is now graduating this semester from the University of Idaho. He's been working for me for 4 years now. But the pens that he gets from BSU TRIO are the best pens that I've seen. He brings me handfuls every fall.
Yeah, well, I think we should celebrate his personal success and get you some donuts. How's that? Any other, and by the way, I remain undefeated in racquetball, so I think that the university, I'm a little worried though, there's a football or tennis coach, Brazilian woman who says she's been practicing and she looks pretty spry, and I'm guessing as a tennis player, racquetball is probably pretty easy for her to learn. So she's challenged me. We haven't quite figured out the day, but I'm a little worried that I may go down on this one. So we'll see. But anyway.
Now, are they letting you win, or you?
I don't think they are.
Okay.
No, I haven't played as much as I'd like. I played a few students, like a retired faculty member. I played a couple of staff members, and most of the people just don't have the game. Let's put it that way. And there was one retired faculty member who is both quite good and left-handed, and left-handers are a bit of a problem. And so it came pretty close. I'm glad that I managed to beat him. And this Brazilian woman who's a tennis coach is also left-handed, which I think is unfair.
Double challenge.
Yeah.
The feedback I hear is when people see you on campus and see you doing that and interacting, it makes you real.
I am actually real. Quite real. So.
When are they knocking down your house?
What?
When are they knocking down your house?
It was not my house. No, we have to be careful about that. It's definitely not my house. So we are taking an item to the board in October for the construction of a new university house on that site. And so if that goes through, which I kind of anticipate it will, we'll go out to bid, and then if we get appropriate bids and we can do it, then I would think probably shortly after that. But I'm not sure exactly when that. The plan is basically to knock down that existing home, sort of reuse part of the excavation for the basement of the new university house, and then build a structure in essentially the same place. And if all goes well, I would think that will be done in the summer of 16. So, yeah. And I sure wish somebody would buy my house in Lexington and my house in South Dakota. That's dragging on a little bit. So, anyway, anything else? No, sorry to intrude on your business, but
thank you for increasing your own workload by coming to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We were at the career level, right?
Yes.
Okay. The state of the university, speaking of President Staben, is tentatively scheduled for October 13th at 3 p.m. For this semester, at least, Greg and I kind of talked to President Staben about holding a staff open forum this semester, and we decided to hold off on that and use the State of the University address as the opportunity for staff to ask questions. If enough staff don't attend, and if enough questions don't come up, then we may readdress that in the future. We will definitely try to have a staff forum in the spring, but I'm telling you this because I definitely encourage you, if your calendars permit, to attend the State of the University address and use that opportunity to kind of participate in this shared governance that we're forcing on our institution.
What's the date again?
10/13 at 3 p.m. in the admin auditorium is my guess. It's a great opportunity to kind of learn about those priorities that we just had the president talk about, that he'll address for the university as a whole, but he will take input at that time, and so it's a great time for us as staff to stand up and provide our input to not just the university community, but others who are interested in hearing the university address. I had on here appreciation fair tabling, but I feel like that was covered in the volunteer registration.
And we need volunteers to keep signing up. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a staff affairs person. It's a staff appreciation fair, so anybody can, if there's people in your offices that would be interested, pass it on to them, because we love to have all kinds of people.
So I know that we're all busy, and we'll get to the appreciation fair, but if you can make it or pass it on, that'd be great. I also wanted to bring up something. I don't know if that we want to open this up for discussion. I just kind of want to present it to the group and let you sit on it if you like for a while. Think about it, stew on it, or, say yay or nay right now. It's your call. The president and administration have started using the term staff council when referring to us. I think that's thanks to some conversations that Brian had with the president early on in his tenure. And I think that's great. I mean, I think that changing our name is part of our kind of whole change in what we do and who we are. And I just kind of wanted to present it to this group as an option that we could, if we wanted to, change our name now in anticipation of what we see as a future as a staff council. Starting to call ourselves that even before our bylaws are changed, even before we have a strategic plan laid out, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's certainly doable. And how do I know this? Because I talked to someone about it. Who knows? So I did check, and it's not unheard of. So any big thoughts on that? I'm not asking anyone to vote on it or anything like that right now. I just wanted to put it out there and see what your thoughts are on that.
Yay.
Council certainly has more weight than, committee.
What council or senate?
Taking on the name Senate was seen as competitive. We could certainly readdress that, but we are making such good momentum with our collaboration with our faculty and administration. It might not be the best move, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't support it fully if that's what this committee wanted.
Competitive with faculty senate? Competitive in what way?
Same name.
I don't care. Competitive. I mean, that's kind of, that's just pandering to egos again.
Right.
So my 2 cents is that it really doesn't matter what in the world this committee is called. It's what the committee or the council does. And if not using the word Senate means that we won't be stepping on toes and being able to do work as effectively anyway, I just think a name's a name. So I don't think that there's any reason, as we've discussed in the past, to try to make it the Senate, because it isn't the Senate, and the voting power, there's some things like that, but it doesn't, whatever we call ourselves. I think council sounds better than committee, but that's just perception and nothing more.
I have to say that I'm on board with Brian as far as not making other people feel uncomfortable if we don't have to. And also, having attended one faculty senate meeting, I am very aware that, they meet weekly for an hour and a half, and what they do is broader in scope than what we do. And I'm not sure that we're ready to take on a Senate role, whereas council, we can make that whatever we want it to be.
Well, it's a difference between saying something like garbage man and janitorial service or something like that. There's a spin on words. So if you feel that Senate, and I wasn't actually saying, damn it, we're going for Senate. What I was saying is, if the whole reason not to do it is simply to powder butts, I don't support that. But if it's because they do something significantly different than we do, and it's easier not to, not to be pretentious, then I'm fine with that.
Could it be both? Is that okay?
It can be anything it wants to be, as Ryan has pointed out.
I mean, is the reason to change the name just because it sounds better? Is that the only reason you want to do it, just because it sounds better?
Right, so I would say not the sound, but the connotation and kind of the history of staff affairs. In my opinion, it kind of is tied to some of the events that we hold, which are great, fantastic events. Super. A name change would be kind of indicative of the step, in my mind, would be indicative of kind of the step forward that we see ourselves moving in. And it just happens to seem like the right time, because of some of the changes that have happened recently.
I agree with that completely, especially with the changes. There was just a name change for the sake of name change, but there are significant changes that have been made and will be made as well. And I would agree with what the Senate does, having gone to Senate meetings now, that it is a different body. And some of what, not any better, not any worse, but they do a lot of things that are different from what staff council or staff affairs does do. And so having a different name, I think, is warranted.
I think we're building up our abilities in governmentship. We should acknowledge that in some way. Our role is becoming greater, and although we may not be at the Senate level, we have a lot more stake role. And we should celebrate that in some way. Just almost like a celebration of it.
Yeah, you guys are stating it way better than that.
Celebration. Yeah, it's like a stepping stone. We've come a long way, and I think we're still growing. And he's hit the nail on the head. It's where we're going and what we've done to get there. And I think that's a great representation of all the people on this committee.
Is it Staff Affairs Council or Staff Affairs?
Staff Council.
Or is it just Staff Council? So how many things do we have branded with Staff Affairs? I'm just looking around, just a couple things.
A lot.
So cost-wise, that may be a consideration.
Right, I don't think that, okay, so yes, that is a consideration, I agree. I didn't foresee us rebranding, as it were, at this time, but perhaps, yeah, that is a consideration. I agree, I'm glad that you brought that up, yeah. Because it is something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Right, so when we do a name change, it's like and you say you don't want to do a rebranding, but if we're going to actually come up with a new name, and then we're going to communicate that new name out, there has to be, and we have the substance, but we also have to communicate the substance. So in effect, pretty much what we're doing is repositioning ourselves, which means that if we are going to do that repositioning, we need to have a clear understanding of how to communicate that out. Because if one day we're staff affairs, the next day we say, hey, we're staff council, our internal audiences will be like, huh? Okay. Wait, I'm confused. Where'd staff affairs go? Or what's going on? So we need to communicate, hey, we're staff council now. These are the progress that we've made, and we need to make sure we have a nice, good communication plan to get that out, because it's pretty much we're branding ourselves and we have a reputation now that we need to, we've built up a reputation. We need to have that continue on. We're evolving from staff affairs, staff council, because we are doing these things now, and we are more in line with strategy. We're more in line with decision making, and that's why we're staff council now. So I think it needs to be we stay or we go all out and let's do it. We rebrand ourselves, we build a different thing, and away we go.
And I love it. I mean, I like the idea. It's a great name, and I'm in favor of that. I just think I'm with you. I think that if we're going to do it, we need to do it strong and not just, we're going to call ourselves, just to our friends and family, I mean, I think we need to do it. Yeah, we need to do it strong.
I agree with Chad. I mean, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of reinvent ourselves in the minds of everyone at the university. And I think if we do go all out and we have a communication plan and we really go after it, it will be much more effective, I think, and positive for us as a council in the long run.
I think it might help faculty and staff understand what we're all about, where, as Deb said earlier, staff affairs, I know a lot of people who have, 25 plus years longevity here, and they thought that all we did was the appreciation fair and the award ceremony. So I think by going all out and renaming us, getting the word out there and really selling it, that and let people know that, we have a voting say for the staff and what we're all about. It's kind of a new way to get our name out there, that we do a lot more than just this. And those things, the fun things that we do, they are for you. And that, staff, council, that we are the ones that are working to make those things happen, the fun stuff as well.
If I might add, President Staben just said right here, we have a pretty significant turnover in staff. So you don't have a lot of 25 years, you have a lot of new people. This is a good time and opportunity for them to know that we exist and what our purpose is going to be. And since that'll piggyback fully on with this vision that we're trying to come up with the other committee as we move forward. So I wasn't being argumentative. I was pointing out a thing. If what we do mimics what faculty council does, and it makes a lot of sense, to follow those same guidelines and say, look, this is already an established entity, and we are beginning to mirror it as our goals parallel.
I'm trying to think of things that we have, tangible items that are already have staff affairs on, and I really don't know of that many besides our the banner and our pins and.
Okay. So could we possibly, those who are interested and involved, and just the rest of us, just think about it. And I'll add it. Would you be okay with me adding it to the agenda for next month? Okay. Every time I hear subcommittee, I think of Mark. For God so loved the world that he did not create me or something. But yeah, that's a great. Okay. Would you guys be okay with me sending out an email, seeing if anyone's interested? Okay.
You can say that.
Okay, now we're on to our committee reports. Let's look at our tobacco-free. Oh, I was just looking for my agenda. You gotta get out of your dungeon, right?
Yeah.
Faculty Senate, go.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had we had a get-together earlier in August, and then we've actually had two formal faculty senate meetings. They had a faculty, I can't remember what that's called, a general faculty meeting last week, which I didn't see any point in going to. So 3 weeks ago, we discussed what the priorities for Senate were going to be for the year, and we kind of voted on them, which got very interesting because people question like, well, why can I only vote for you? This and that and the other. We went around and surveyed. Anyway, the top. I'll just read the top five. The top one. Every single person in Faculty Senate voted that career ladders and internal promotion policies was just not career ladders. Career ladders and internal promotion policies was the number one thing that Senate was concerned with. And Mark and I, our jaws almost dropped because we didn't even have to say anything. we're just like, wow. So that was fantastic. Enrollment was next, talent management, talking about partner accommodations, faculty evaluations, faculty and staff turnover was second, distance learning, tuition and benefits for faculty, staff, children, and then compensation. And then there were some other ones, but we're very, very pleased with that, and it made it very easy for Mark and I sitting there, and I actually just waited until the end and then just said thanks to them. So other than that, Dawn Crowley is the new faculty secretary since Gail is no longer there. This week we had Matt Dorschel come and talk about firearms discussion. Senate, not including me, had a lot of questions that needed to be answered, and so Matt provided answers to some of those, and those will be on the Senate minutes if you want to actually look at those. But I will say that one thing that had to be pointed out multiple times, and I pointed out yesterday as well, is that it seems that most of the questions were geared around, well, what do I do when a student has this, or a student does this, or can I put this in my syllabi? And I think that what they're forgetting is that they could be carrying a firearm too if they went and got the enhanced. So this isn't a student thing, it's a faculty, it's a staff, it's a student, and students are probably going to be the least numbered of folks carrying on campus because most of them are under 21, and most of them are not going to spend $220, which is what it costs to go through the entire program and spend 8 hours in the training as well. So kind of brought that back. Other than that, the provost asked April 20 through 22 is going to be the UI accreditation, and asked that there not be any major university events during that time, you know, small little department things, but just because the university wants to be focusing on accreditation. So other than that, I think we're just kind of moving forward, and I'm still trying to just figure it out. But, I was gonna say that the Senate Constitution, they were looking at term limits, because right now faculty Senate term limits are 3 years, and then you have to take a year off, and then you can do another year. Well, they're running into issues where if somebody wants to be vice chair and then perhaps be chair, they have to make that decision after their first year there. Maybe they don't have enough time. So Dawn Crowley brought up the idea of taking away the year. Well, then people have, well, what if you get somebody in there that you don't want and they're there for 25 years in a row? So I brought up a compromise. I said, well, what staff affairs does is that, you know, they'll let them do 2-3 year terms, but then they have to take a year off. So you could actually do 6 years in a row and Senate like that. So, what is Dawn is going back and rewriting that, and it looks like they'll probably be making a change to the faculty constitution. And that's kind of what they're looking at. But thus far, it seems to be going pretty much in staff's favor. So, yay! That's all I've got, and I'm out of here.
Thanks for representing. Other advisory, anything from F&A?
No, nothing that Ron asked me to report.
So just so you guys know, if I may, Matt is no longer able to sit on the committee, but he is here today as the designee of Finance and Administration for Ron Smith. So thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And Greg isn't here, and Alyssa left. Did Greg give you guys anything? No? So moving on to subcommittee, unless I missed one. Okay, so, yes, let's do that real quick. It's about to.
Okay, so
This is short.
the tobacco task force is alive and well. The president is very supportive of a new tobacco-free campus policy. They have a draft policy, and they are moving forward with making that effective August 24th of 2015. And really quick, the policy states use of any tobacco is prohibited in all university-owned or leased buildings, facilities, vehicles, and grounds. This policy applies to all students, employees, contractors, volunteers, and visitors. What they define as tobacco: cigarettes, cigars, pipes, electronic cigarettes, hookah, all forms of smokeless tobacco, electronic cigarettes, clove cigarettes, other alternative products made primarily from tobacco. Exemptions, in accordance with American Indian Religious Freedom Act, the tobacco-free policy does not apply to products used for ceremonial and traditional rites. Enforcement. All faculty, staff, and students have a collective responsibility to promote the health and safety of the campus community. Everyone is authorized and encouraged to communicate this policy with courtesy, respect, and diplomacy, especially in regards to visitors. Employees in violation of this policy will be subject to discipline as directed by the faculty staff handbook. Students in violation will be subject to discipline in accordance with the student code of conduct. So, the task force is moving forward. They are looking for people who are interested in working on the task force in different areas to meet their timeline for implementation in 2015. Any questions? Concerns?
Can they smoke in their car? I'm not a smoker, but we're debating over here, so I thought I'd just ask.
The policy does not address that specifically, other than it says is prohibited in all university-owned or leased buildings, facilities, vehicles, and grounds.
Okay, so just.
So I guess if the parking lot is owned by the university,
You're not actually. I mean, you're in the on the parking lot, but you're inside the vehicle.
But they own it. They own the ground.
But they don't own the car. I think it would be a good question to ask if you're on the committee. I mean, we have a couple smokers in our building, so I was just thinking where they would go.
the biggest debate at the meeting was over.
Yeah, I mean, for us it's easy, taco time, but.
Yeah, tailgating was the big controversial one. And the faculty senate representatives that were there just thought that it should be spelled out what the policy is for tailgating. Because the approach of the task force at this point is just to kind of let it go. So it's not like there'd be cops there, like enforcing it. If people chose to say, hey, did you know this is tobacco-free campus, they could, but otherwise it's not going to be like, so this faculty senate folks really wanted that spelled out, like, we still maintain it as a tobacco-free campus, but it's not really going to be enforced during tailgating, if that's the case. So it's a little murky.
I don't see it as enforced anyway. We had an influx this summer of a group of young men who apparently were taking a math class out of Renfrew, and they would go lean against a sign on the building that says no smoking within 20 feet, and every day I would come out. And the problem was they were dropping everything and walking away from it. And anytime there's complaints in our building, it comes to me, and then I get to go handle it. And so numerous times out to the dudes going, knock it off, guys, just get over there, move it over there. And it got to the point where they would still do it, or they'd try to go around the side where I couldn't see them, and they would hide their cigarettes. They were determined to lean against the building and against the air intakes. And what are you going to do? Physically, take them out? You don't. I mean, you can't call anybody. So there's no reporting lines. I mean, it's a great philosophy, it really is. But if somebody's determined to just do it anyway, they're going to do it anyway.
The university as a whole, just for the research dollars that we could lose, just having a policy in place suffices.
I think so, yeah.
What if you have different situation when you actually determine to keep the campus, tobacco free, but you let's say I'm working in the middle of the campus, and every time I need to smoke, I have to walk half a mile to the border of the campus. Who's gonna give me that time? Should I take my personal time for that, or
How smoker? Will they smoke in their cars?
You cannot prohibit someone from smoking. So I don't know how is that supposed to work. I don't smoke, but I just got enough into it.
So, well, I was on the task force for the beginning parts, and that was something that was definitely discussed. I mean, that was a great concern to faculty and staff. And essentially, it was just one of those things where they said it's just best to leave the policy kind of vague and kind of let people figure it out.
Oh.
I think we should have a mace squad. People with cans of mace, and they roam. That'll give some teeth to it.
Maybe they can have pagers so they can come raise somebody specifically, you know.
There we go. We will really lock that down.
Please note that Chad Nielsen said,
You can put it in there. I'll see you guys later.
Is there a plan to remove the ashtrays and other things around campus to help discourage that?
Yeah, I think all that stuff would be taken down. There'd be a lot of signage. And it seems like they have a very stepwise implementation plan over the next 12 months. And it will end with like a big event, like a kickoff event where like the media will be invited. Yeah, and there'll just be lots of signs, posters, stuff like that around campus. In addition to all that stuff, there'll also be really promoting like cessation kinds of programs as well to provide support to people if they do want to quit.
Can I have a copy of that attached to a minute?
Sure. Yeah. I'll scan it.
Has anybody ever thought, since this is encouraging like people maintaining being healthy and encouraging a great lifestyle, that it be used with the employee assistance program? Like if people maybe to encourage, if they are thinking they can't, they're quitting, free programs offered, like 8 sessions, I guess, per thing, where people it could help aid in the healthy lifestyles. So that the UI does have some participation as far as lending resources.
My understanding was that they were going to add someone from benefits to the task force, have they?
Well,
or include someone?
I don't know. I mean, they do have proposed additions to the task force. Proposed new partners, HR, facilities, sustainability center, housing, Greek life, communication, risk management, dean of students, athletics, city of Moscow, IPO, admissions, Native American Student Center, parking, Sodexo, alcohol and other drug program, LGBTQA office, and that's it. But they do, part of the policy is that the university is committed to assisting employees, students, visitors, and others who use tobacco. Resources are available, include but are not limited to the following: idaho.quitnet.com, www.uidaho.edu/vandalhealth, and 1-800-QUIT-NOW. Anyone who has concerns, suggestions, or questions can submit these online at Tabasco Task Force to be created.
I'm going to watch out for that Tabasco.
Tabasco Task Force.
Other questions? Thanks, Greg. Staff recognition task force.
Okay, yeah, I do have a report. We met 2 weeks ago and currently we're meeting bi-weekly. In addition to staff affairs members, Greg Walters and Brandy Chewilliker, is that correct?
You got it.
Sweet. Are serving from HR. Patty Heath, who was on staff affairs for quite a while, has joined us, and James Sebald and Carol Grubb from the Retirees Association were there. Kevin Ketchy has been invited, but he couldn't attend last week, or 2 weeks ago. Last time we talked about what's working, what's not, and what could we try, and people are currently researching what our peer institutions are doing. So, you want more questions?
Questions? Okay, cool. And are you looking at just awards specifically right now?
Right now, we're just looking at awards. We're going to include the appreciation fair once the appreciation fair is over, and those people have more time.
And Deborah brought to my attention at the executive meeting that it might be a good idea in the future, after you guys look at awards, to look at the kudos as well and see how we can support
That actually has been included.
Questions? Great. Appreciation. I didn't add that to the agenda. Not bad.
So I put some flyers on the table, so if you could take that, distribute them. We're gonna have some that are up on flat screens. So right now, we just need to get the word out that there is an appreciation fair. It is going to be baked potatoes, no mashed potato bun this year. We recalculated the numbers and it just gives, financially a better decision is to go with the baked potatoes than to have two different options. So we are just going to do the baked potatoes. And President's Office is donating the dessert, so we're having cupcakes that are going to be silver and gold, so it'll be kind of fun. And then for those people who don't like dairy or can't eat dairy or don't like sweets, we're going to have like a fruit bowl option. And we have vendors. We're just kind of trying to make it an exciting day. So please help us spread the word, and please sign up. And like I said before, if you have anybody in your office who likes to do this kind of thing, likes to visit, likes to see people on campus, please have them sign up. We need people to help serve food, people to help with the desserts. You don't really have to do anything. We have a little surprise with the desserts, so you have to come to see what that is. And then we need people to help clean off tables, people to help with the welcome table, and then we also have a staff affairs table that we need to have help with. So if you have any questions, please ask Amber Curley or myself.
And if I might add to that, if anybody has a close relationship to someone as far as donating prizes that could give something for the random prizes that are given out throughout the day, don't hesitate to ask them to donate something for a prize. That would be greatly appreciated. Or if you yourself make something, or you know a vendor downtown that is just dying to give stuff away, would be appreciated.
Questions?
Just got a comment. If you're downtown around vendors, it would be really nice to ask them, hey, are you guys going to be at the Staff Appreciation Fair? Because if they haven't heard of it for some reason, maybe they would go, oh, how do we get involved with that? And if they are going, it kind of gives them reinforcement that this is a good thing to be involved with.
Because we can still take more vendors.
How many do you have?
We have 30-something, but we're on a mission to get more.
How many did you have last year?
Last year we had 60, and a lot of people wait till the last minute to register. And the registration due date is the 22nd.
Do any other subcommittees feel like they need to report? Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. Old business. Staff fair strategic plan, right?
So we had about 10 people from this body come together with a facilitator to start the strategic planning process. And it went really well. We have a great facilitator, Lori Higgins. And that group is going to meet again today for a couple of hours after this meeting to finish that kind of initial process. And then after that, I think we'll start, we'll have enough information kind of put together. Lori will help us kind of start putting a draft together, and that's what we'll be able to put it out to the full body for review and comment. So yeah, I think it's going really well. I really like Lori's approach. It came from a really positive place. What do we do well, and how do we enhance that and move forward in a positive way? So yeah, there'll be more to come, and you know, we're gonna definitely engage the full council, so that everyone will have an opportunity to kind of see what came out of that process and if we missed any, missed anything big. So we want to be as inclusive and transparent as possible through the whole process.
So Lori Higgins is the one that's facilitating that, so she's been really great. That's really, she's donating that time, right? Well, it's part of her position.
Part of her position.
As extension. Yeah, so thanks to everyone who came and is coming. APM 5051.
Did everyone have a chance to glance through what I sent out yesterday?
It says option to vote here. Is there an option to vote that we waiver this for the next meeting?
I think the option is there. I don't think that we need to vote on this at this time. I think that we're not comfortable.
I'm not comfortable. I still haven't read through all of the, especially the answers from them, because the format in which the answers came back, I had to go back and try to redo, I don't know. I'll show you what I got from on the answers. It's like there was numbers put in some of those responses from Greg. And so I had a difficult time trying to read them. So I don't know if it was my computer, which I'm on Word document 2000, or Office 2013.
I think
or if it was
yours,
just,
because mine couldn't find.
I sent it as a PDF.
so I'll have to look at that again, because it was just all scrambled.
Okay, I don't
Did
understand
anyone
all
else have
this.
formatting issues with the way that, it was just PowerPoint slides that were PDF. So the PowerPoint. So no other formatting? Okay. It's unclear to me whether we need to vote on this at all or what. So the policy committee reviewed the changes. We came up with about 6 different things that we wanted Greg to address, and he addressed them. I don't know, I haven't heard back from the policy committee as whether they were addressed in a satisfactory way. So I'm not really sure how to move on with it. I don't know if anyone has any advice.
I think that this procedure, this APM, was brought to us for us to have the opportunity to take a look at it and to provide our input before it moves into effect. So it would be nice if we could come to a place where we felt comfortable saying, we as a group are comfortable with this moving forward. We feel like every effort has been made to ensure that staff needs have been addressed in this procedure. And if we feel comfortable with that, then we can make a recommendation. If we don't, then we can put it up. But eventually, we do need to have something at some point, even if it's, no, we cannot come to an agreement on whether we feel comfortable with it. I realize that's very vague, and it's not very official of me, but that's kind of what I think that was the point of this. And so, I don't know that we have to approve it or disapprove it, but we need to decide whether we're comfortable with this moving forward. And if we're not, then we need to take some sort of action, mainly communicating with Greg Walters in particular, and stating exactly what we hope to achieve through any changes. So, my question to this group is are you comfortable moving forward and saying, I feel like every effort has been made to meet staff needs in this procedure, in this revision?
Well, I can't say that because I haven't really thoroughly read it, because I had, as you can see, I had an issue reading them from.
Anyone else?
If I can, when you look at the 6 points that the policy committee brought to Greg and his responses, really the one that's still, in my mind anyways, significant and kind of unresolved is the criteria by which the committee, the HR committee, will determine whether the job has significant changes enough to reclassify it. And so Greg is contending that significant is impossible to define. Okay, so I'm not sure, I mean, I'm not being an expert in this area, I'm not sure if that's true or not. I mean, it seems to me you could clearly define the criteria by which you will determine whether a position will be reclassified.
You would think.
By just saying that that the changes have to be significant, that pretty much leaves all of the decision-making power, I guess, or it leaves it very vague. It leaves it with the HR experts and the committee that will decide whether or not it should be changed or reclassified. He does assert that they will be consistent.
My concern with that is it puts those particular staff in an uncomfortable position of making a decision for which we don't understand the basis or the standards.
It's also somewhat unqualified. So recently, and this will come forward, but I had a staff member who, actually a number of staff members in a specific office, come forth because they had had this serious reduction in staff over a period of about 3 or 4 years, and they had a great many more responsibilities dispersed onto them. And they went through the reclassification process or the dispute process, and it was declined. And then they filed a grievance because their pay was not equivalent, and they were asking for retro pay for those additional responsibilities. And they were told that the grievance process has no place. It's not the appropriate place to fight on pay complaints. And at the end of the day, the notes that they got back, and I've got all the documentation, came from HR and it came from Greg. And it said, that in that letter, it was stated that not only did they have to prove significant increase in efforts, it had to be more than 50% more effort or something, so he was, the qualifiers seemed to me like, back in the day when they had the Hayes scale or ratings, there was a definite, you look on this and it fits over here, and you look on this and it fits over here. And so there was, what happened with this staff members was they have now no place to go, and they also have no recourse, and they actually have no clear understanding of why that decision was made. So it's a moving target. And so they were essentially told to shut the hell up and go get back in their box. And that's not what our staff want. If the grievance process, and they can prove that they've worked in additional or increased responsibilities, they can prove the loss of staff that used to support those responsibilities, they can do all of these things and still not be able to argue that the compensation is not comparable and the titles are not comparable, and they are still told, kind of sucks to be you, then they're left with no, and there's no real hard and fast, these are what we compared to. It's a moving target, and it's a moving target that is not being held to the fire on how they're coming to their decisions. There has to, I'm sorry, Teresa, but there has to be, the Hayes system may have been outdated, but there you could look it up and you could jump across and understand how they reached the decision. Does the person supervise X number of people be underneath them? And if they do, what is the percentage of time that they do that? If so, boom, you go to this column. And there, we don't have that. There's nothing that's...
And then, he says he's going to be consistent. I mean, I don't know that I feel it's consistent now. How can we guarantee that he's going to be consistent later? I mean, that's been the problem. Some of the problem and some of the upset was because they didn't feel like it was consistent. You had somebody doing something in this college with a business manager job, requiring a degree, and the next job over at another college was business manager without a degree. I mean, there's not a lot of consistency
and
now.
without the same criteria.
Without the same, yeah.
So I don't understand it. Is it because there's different levels of people that have a say-so over what kind of position they get, or are we going to be treated fairly across the board? The position is posted, just like we used to before. When HR staff was there, no offense to, but we can go to our HR people and they would literally sit down with us and go over, okay, what are the actual changes? Okay, this requires this requires that. And once we went through all of that, then they would tell us, okay, given the fact that this position doesn't do as much what you thought it did, we can't really reclass it, but at least they were there to assist us, to really tell us what was needed for that position. And we moved forward with, we all knew what the outcome was going to be. But here, it's like, we can submit a position, and it'll be a classified, or it will be a classified different, in a different level, or I just don't get it. And it could be the same criteria across the board, and it'll be different. The outcome will be different.
I appreciate the discussion that's going on, and I hate to cut us off, but it is almost 11 o'clock. So what I would like to invite us to do, and this involves some work on our part as well as the policy committee, is send any further concerns we have as soon as possible. Read the document, send your concerns to Greg. This guy, Greg Fazell. And perhaps the policy committee can convene again and kind of gather them all together and figure out if there are any further recommendations that we can make. Are we on board with that? If you're not, speak now. Okay. We'll try to address this again at the next meeting. Anything else quickly?
I have binders for those people that need binders.
Yay! Before everyone takes off, I really want to say that I have kind of tried to check in on work that everyone on this committee has been doing lately, and I really appreciate everything that all of you have been doing. I know that it's really hard to find time for these kinds of things, and it means so much. The work that we're doing is so great. So thank you to everyone off campus and on campus. You guys, I mean, it's just so great to work with such a fantastic group of people. I really think we're making some good progress, even if our meetings are not as well facilitated as they could be. So, okay, meeting adjourned.